Today on Pro Church Daily, we're discussing why you need to eliminate this form of Christianese to be more welcoming for new visitors.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Daily, the show where in 10 minutes or less, you'll get your daily dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift we've seen in the last 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills. I'm joined as always by the boss man. It's Brady Shearer. And today, we're talking about eliminating this one form of Christianese to be a more welcoming church.
When you grow up in the Christian faith, there's a lot of words, terms, and verbiage that we now universally accept as normal. But for many that are outside of the church world, they just don't recognize these words at all. We call these words Christianese.
Right.
They make sense to us. They seem part of a familiar language, but to others, they are otherworldly.
Yeah.
And as our culture becomes more and more unchurched, we've seen the decline in church attendance every single year. We have to be more cognizant and aware of the words that we're using that are very insider focused, that are just, they're not like unkind to those that are new to our church,
Right.
but they kind of create implicitly, subconsciously, this us versus them mentality,
For sure.
where you can feel like a real outsider
Yeah.
when you attend a church for the first time. And one simple way that churches don't often know that they're doing this is with the way that they refer to the facilities and the operations, the cards within their church. So one example of this would be the fellowship center.
Yeah.
So to you, the person that's attended that church for 10 years, you know that that's the brown mahogany kind of desk area
Yeah.
that Jody always stands at after church. There's no label, but everyone knows that's the ministry center, except for the new family who is like, what the heck is a ministry center?
Yeah.
And they don't know what that is at all. And you're asking them to go and visit that desk immediately after church to hand in their Connect card so that they can receive their free gift, but they're never going to go because they're like, I'm not going to hunt down this ministry center.
Yeah.
So what we did at our church is we began referring to everything through colors.
Awesome.
So it's one thing to call something the ministry center and to have like a big banner in front of it that reads ministry center. That's definitely a huge step up from an unmarked area that everyone who's inside the church knows what it's called, but everyone new does not. At the very least, you want to have them marked. And if you have Christianese, at the very least, it says ministry center. But just yesterday, you and I were talking about a restaurant in the Niagara region called Tide and Vine. And I have been there, and I had an amazing lobster. And neither of us remember the word for this dish.
Yeah.
And this is one analogy that I like to use. If you ever go to a fancy restaurant and you're like, I'm excited, I'm out with my wife or my friends, and you open the menu and you're like, none of these words make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's a thing fancy restaurants do to kind of set them apart to show that, look, you are in a very special place. And you're right, none of these words make sense, but that's what makes it cool.
Yeah.
And this makes sense in some settings, and if you want your church to do this, that's your call. I don't think that that type of language and branding belongs in a church because we want people to become a part of our culture. We want them to belong. We want them to feel like family. And so we don't want to have this us versus them mentality. And so using verbiage like lobster troubadour or trumpador or pompadour or I cannot remember.
Right.
But it was awesome. And we're having trouble talking about it because we cannot remember the verbiage.
Yeah.
Same thing can happen with something like ministry center. Even if it is a marked area, which is better than unmarked, ministry center might mean something to you. But if someone hears it for the first time, I asked the server, what is this lobster thing called? I asked her for proper pronunciation, and I still cannot remember because the word is unfamiliar. I've only heard it a couple of times, and it slipped my memory.
Yeah.
So what you want to do, what we've done, is make things incredibly simple. We have color-coded everything when it comes to next steps. So instead of saying, go to the fellowship desk, I say from stage announcements and every time we're asking someone to take a next step in our facility, go to the big blue wall.
There you go.
And even for those that are colorblind, which is a minority but does include people, they can recognize the big difference of colors. So you don't want to do like, go to the taupe wall, go to the kind of taupe wall.
the off-white wall.
Like, that's when things, but like, if everything is white and then some things are blue, that's a very clear distinction. So go to the big blue wall.
Right.
You might not remember the info of the ministry center, and you might not remember that verbiage, but you won't forget the big blue wall. And even from stage, I'll say it 2 or 3 times. I'll be like, the big blue wall, the same one I mentioned before. It's big, it's blue.
Yeah.
And I'll be a little bit funny with
That's
it so
good.
that you do not forget. And we do the same thing with the cards in the seat backs in front of us. We call our card the Connect card, but I don't refer to it as the Connect card from stage. I refer to it either as the big blue card to then build that kind of continuing brand. It's like, yeah, big blue card. I take it to the big blue wall.
Makes sense.
You can never forget that.
Yeah.
But even when I refer to it as the Connect card, I don't say take out your Connect card because if you've never been to a church,
No idea what
in
that
the
is.
hay is a Connect card.
Yeah.
I say take out the card that reads Connect card at the top.
Nice.
And so now they know, okay, I'm looking for a card that says Connect card at the top. I still prefer just to say the big blue card, but you can go either way. Now we're splitting hairs. This is like deep into the minutia of nerdery and communication.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, remove the Christianese, remove the barriers, and stop the us versus them. We want everyone to feel like they belong.
Yeah, our church went through this a couple years ago. We had a big influx of new visitors, and so we kind of had to take a step back and put ourselves in the seat of the first-time visitor and maybe even the unchurched, somebody who's not only coming to our church for the first time, but coming to a church for the first time that just happens to be our church. And we had to kind of evaluate these Christianese terms that we were using that weren't inherently bad. They
No.
weren't wrong. You know, all these words, most of these words are fine, and they mean something to us. But they were almost creating a barrier between, like you said, engagement, like kind of, it was creating an us versus them, an insider versus outsider kind of atmosphere. And we thought we need to break down these walls so that when somebody comes into our church for the first time, they don't feel out of place. They're not misunderstood, but they know what's going on. And so our church used to be called Life Abundant Fellowship, which is interesting because this is the example we're using today, talking about the fellowship desk or what have you. And so we got rid of the word fellowship, not because it's wrong, but because it was kind of creating almost a religious barrier. So now we're Life Abundant Niagara. We identify now with our community as opposed to this fellowship word. And
You've given up all fellowship and community now. You hate that.
No, we still live in fellowship and community.
Just because you removed the word doesn't mean you abandoned the value.
Right. And so
Fascinating.
our cafe used to be called the Fellowship Room, of course, naturally. Now it's called the Living Room because we're Life Abundant Niagara, and living room, it kind of personifies that feel of what it is. It's where you can sit down, have a cup of coffee, and make connections with people. And so we've gone through this at our church, and we've really seen the fruit of it, this engagement on the same playing field with first-time visitors, with unchurched people, just by getting rid of a couple words that, like I said, are not inherently wrong, but we're just creating unnecessary barriers.
And when you say you've seen the fruit of it, are you talking bananas or apples, oranges?
No, we've just seen, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain or quantify, but you can almost just see on the face of a first-time visitor that they don't feel lost, but they feel understood.
And even that example, like you said, without skipping a beat, we've seen the fruit of it, which everyone listening understands that.
Yeah.
And this is like Christianese. It gets into every single part of us because it seems so familiar. Someone goes, what the heck, fruit? Where is this getting fruit?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
That was Christianese, wasn't it?
Well,
Look at me.
and it's not even not bad,
Yeah.
but we just do it and we don't think. And so I understand that this can be uncomfortable. I imagine there were people in your church that were like, no, this church is called Life Abundant Fellowship
Yeah,
because we fellowship. And
Right.
if you're removing that, what you're saying is you hate Jesus. and so you have to decide because you can go either way on this. No one's forcing you to do this.
Right.
But if you were going to take a stand and be like, this is how we've done it always, and this is how we do it still, you have to recognize that what you're saying implicitly, because you're making a choice, is that you are prioritizing your culture and the insider group over the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
And we do this with all types of communication. A pastor will say, I don't really like this minimal look of websites. And even though all the data suggests that familiar and simple websites perform best with visitors, I've decided to go against that. That's fine, but you have to be okay. Recognize that you're prioritizing what you care about and not prioritizing what the people you're trying to reach care about.
Yeah.
And so you have to say, yeah, based on my choices and actions, I care more about our church's existing people than the people that we're trying to reach.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I'm not saying that has to be like, a binary choice, either or, but I've found that our church has become so much more vibrant when we're focused on reaching people. Every single week, I say some of the same exact announcements. I say like, fill out the Connect card.
Yeah.
And if you come to our church every single week, you've heard that a million times, and Brady says the same script every single week, and it can become tiring. But when your church is like, yeah, but people are here for the first time and have never experienced church, and they're hearing this, I'm totally okay sitting through a 1 minute talk about a Connect card because it can mean life change for somebody else.
Of course.
Bottom line. That'll do it for today's episode of Pro Church Daily. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Hey, thanks for watching today's episode of Pro Church Daily. Make sure to subscribe to the Pro Church Tools channel so you never miss another video.
And if you like this video, why don't you go ahead and smash the like button?
Smash it! See you tomorrow.